quite an interesting chapter. A lot of interesting info in here. We got Yahweh sends 3 angels to visit Abraham and Sarah to announce Sarah will conceive a son on the 1st of the 4th month. And this, I actually did some cross-referencing at the bottom of each slide with the parallel passages of this account in Jubilees. And that's how we can know that these guys showed up at the 1st of the 4th month. With actually, according to Jubilee 6, this is actually a feast day. One of the new moon festivals is the 1st day of the 4th month. So it's interesting that these angels in Jubilees are always showing up on the appointed times. I think that's something to consider. I told my wife 2 years ago when I realized that when I was reading through Jubilees, and I was like, wait a minute. If you line up Jubilees and Genesis, all these accounts of these angels showing up, it's always on appointed times.
That's deep.
Like that's something, you know?
Right.
But to me, that's not a coincidence.
No, word.
You know, same thing with Jesus tells the disciples in Acts chapter 1, he's like, go and wait for me, you know? So they waited in the upper room until what? Shavuot. Yeah. So it's interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that jump out to me personally in Genesis 18. I know like your channel is becoming like notorious for like Trinitarians kind of coming on and speaking their piece. And I know you deal with you constantly get put between a rock and a hard place when it comes to the Trinity issue. I know you always extend love to the brothers out there that are Trinitarian and modalists. These texts that we're going to read, especially Genesis 18, I know that's a big one for them. The 3 men that appeared to Abraham. Yeah. I know that, you know what I'm saying? Like, I know that they really tap into that, but Hebrews 13 in the book of Hebrews, the writer of Hebrews makes it clear that those were angels, right?
Yes.
Right. So
yeah. And also does Jubilees. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this is where I think we get a lot of that confusion is because the Catholic canon rejected Jubilees and the Protestant canon didn't even know about it. You know, meanwhile, the Eastern Orthodox Tawhid canons had it this whole time. But had they have had that, they probably wouldn't have come to those assumptive conclusions, which were forced on them by Catholicism back in the day.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I also like Abraham's hospitality. We were kind of talking about that in the back. We were joking about it, but I just think it's interesting. Like he's 99 years old, and he runs out in the heat of the day to go meet them. And he doesn't even ask if they're hungry. Like he just gets the meal prepped for him and all that. And Sarah's, she's down with it. Babe, I need you to make some bread. Gets the young bull prepped and has their feet washed. That's another thing we read in Hebrews too, right? What verse is that? Where the writer of Hebrews is saying to basically mirror that attitude. Abraham, who unbeknownst to him entertained angels.
Hebrews 13:2.
There it is, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that I definitely need to go to work on, man. Because when money gets tight, generosity tends to take a hit.
Yeah.
But
well, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think it's in 1 Corinthians. One of the gifts of the Spirit is hospitality, isn't it?
Facts.
No, that's not. I could be wrong. I have to go look that back up.
You said one of the gifts of the Spirit, not one of the
not
fruits.
The gifts of the Spirit, but one of the fruits of the Spirit. Yeah.
Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. I'm sure. I mean, hospitality. Sure. Yeah, it's.
But either way,
by extension, I think
Abraham definitely has it. We'll also see people making note in the chat that this is if you follow Judaism and what they think and what they teach. I think it's 1 Corinthians 12. Judaism thinks that they've been teaching for a long time that it's improper to serve meat and milk at the same meal, and that's exactly what Abraham serves these angels. So this this should tell you right off the bat that Judaism is made up man-made traditions after the fact, because this is they sit down and eat this meal with him. They don't have no qualms about eating meat and milk in the same meal.
Facts.
All right, I apologize. I don't want to get us too far off. I'll have to find this later. I can't remember the exact verse right now, but hospitality is definitely mentioned as one of the benefits and one of the kindnesses that it's outgrowth of the Spirit working through you, and so which is I think why we're encouraged to do that in the Torah itself, right? You should treat the stranger with love. The foreigner, you should treat him with love, and So this is what Abraham's doing.
I just know, so the guests were unexpected, right? I got like aunties, like if I show up unexpected, they'll have a meal like, oh baby, it's a long time. I ain't seen you,
Yeah.
hook up a meal, stuff like that. For me, sometimes I can be a grumpy old man when I have unexpected guests, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So pray for your boy, But s- uh I'm trying to see the angels tell them they'll return again on a feast day. We touched on that, yeah. The angels
Yeah.
share with Abraham how they're going to carry out judgment on the cities uh, of the plain of Sodom and Gomorrah. Um,
Yeah, there was 5 cities there, even though most people just refer to that as Sodom and Gomorrah.
right.
But there were supposedly 5 cities there, and it looks like one of those cities is actually spared because that's where Lot runs to. We're gonna read that in the following chapters in that city of Zoar, or Zoan, I think it is. But, and that's the smallest of the 5 cities. But it seems like Lot was living according to, chapter 14 of Genesis, when Lot got captured after the king of Sodom had been invaded by those other kings. It seems like Lot himself is actually living in the city of Sodom amongst these other cities in this point.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So, one question I wanted to ask you when I was going over this chapter, I was thinking about Sarah's laughter versus
Mhm.
Abraham's laughter. Right? Do you feel like they got two different reactions?
Yeah, I think it's Abraham's initial laughter is definitely not. I wonder if it was. Um, you know how people can laugh in different spirits.
Hmm.
People can laugh with a different connotation. You know that the type of laugh can be a surprise laughter versus a mocking laughter.
Understood.
So I'm wondering if her laughter was more of a I'm in another room. I'm not sitting in front of these dudes. They're not going to see me mocking their thoughts, or they're not going to see me. You know, this the sinister laugh that I'm giving.
Mm,
Whereas Abraham's laughter when he fell on his face could have been like a oh what wait what,
got you.
you know, like
Got
a
you.
surprised kind of like, you know, but yeah, you never know. Clearly they decided to talk to her and share with her that hey, we could hear you in the other room, by the way, we're you know, we're not getting past us. I love the fact on in this passage though, he says the angel says no,
We
you
heard
did
you.
laugh.
You did laugh.
Yeah. No, but you did laugh.
How,
So this is where we always try to talk about agency, just to remind folks that the text in multiple places, validating witnesses tell us these were angels that showed up. A lot of
amen.
people like to believe this is a pre-incarnate Yeshua that showed up. Some people like to believe this is God Himself that showed up
Right.
because of the wording. And I'm like,
Right.
guys, everywhere in the wording, throughout all the law and the prophets, every time the Father sends His ministering messengers to give a message to a prophet, it always says the word of the Lord showed up.
Hmm.
So like
And
this is a
sometimes straight up
consistent.
just says sometimes it just straight up uses his divine name, but it's still
Yeah.
in reference to the angel, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it's kinda like if you don't know how the process works, you'd get confused, but if you know how
Facts.
a king has emissaries, he sends out his messengers. A king doesn't
Right.
go do every single little piece of dirty work or his light work. He sends out people to do stuff for him, you know?
Word.
So, this is where it's just try to remind folks, yeah, I know the text says, "The Lord said," "The Lord replied," you know, that kinda stuff, but
Hmm.
it's, these are angels that show up looking like men that are just literally having a meal with Abraham and everything. And so, what do you? This is the part I love to draw to people because it reminds me of Yeshua's resurrected body, which is these guys are having a meal with Abraham and Sarah, and the food is not falling to the ground.
Yeah, I've heard you bring that out before.
Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on that? How do you think that? I mean, what do you think is going on there?
Um, well, I would assume that they have internal organs. They would have the parts of the body that they would need in order to process that food. Now, obviously, the explicit explanation for that, I have no clue because I haven't read anywhere how that
Yeah.
works. Right.
Yeah. Me neither. The Bible, I've never seen it really break it down.
Have you ever? I don't think I've even ever read a verse that says that angels are materializing. I know it says that they appeared as men, or that someone looked like a son of man. But does that mean that they put on that appearance, or does that mean maybe that they just look like that and they just appear?
Yeah,
And
it reminds me of Second Baruch chapter 51, verses 8 through 11, where it talks about the promise of the resurrection of mankind, that we're going to inherit the world that's invisible to us now, which is a New Jerusalem to descend later, and
Mhm.
that we will get these we'll be able to change our form into any lovely thing that we desire.
Oh wow,
So it does seem that there's a shifting ability for your form to
wow,
be, transitory between, you know, wherever you need. I mean, that's why they can appear and disappear, like Yeshua exemplifies, right? In
Right.
Luke 24, he breaks bread with the two dudes after coming back from Emmaus, just disappears right in front of them. He appears inside of a locked room in John 20, and twice actually. And so, yeah, that's the capability they seem to present. And when it comes to them, in that moment in John 20, Jesus also said, "You got any fish? I'm hungry."
Mhm. You had to
What a
throw a fish.
hilarious, like, you imagine like, your buddy gets back from running a marathon, and he's like, "Man, you got any food? I'm hungry."
Facts.
And you
Yeah.
just like, you give it to him, right? These dudes just saw this guy get crucified and buried,
I
and he
know it was
shows up
probably a
again. He's
trip,
like, "Man,
right?
I'm hungry. Has anybody got some good food?" So, not a lot of good
All
food in
things
Sheol.
considered. All things considered, right? Yeah.
And they're like, "Sure, sure, yeah, here's some food, yeah." It's interesting little paradigm of him just saying, "Yeah, you got any fish?" And he eats that. It somehow goes into his new glorified resurrected body, which we're told those new glorified resurrected bodies will be like angelic bodies. So they have to process the food in some way. And
Facts.
maybe it's just that they process it in a purified way, which is why they can only eat things that are labeled as clean foods,
Clean
because
foods.
will allow you to actually digest it properly. And you can't eat anything that's unclean. Maybe it doesn't digest properly.
That's deep.
You know, I don't
That's
know.
deep.
Just something to consider.
How long do you think it took Abraham's servant to prepare that young bull?
Oh, I'm thinking this is like a 4 or 5 hour occasion.
Okay, so check this out. So this is what I'm thinking. Like
Yeah.
he didn't just leave them there. So he must have
Right.
like been keeping them entertained with
Right. Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. Like, oh, so how was your
You know what I'm
trip?
saying?
Yeah. Like,
That's a trip.
what
Like
level of the firmament you live on? Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Like, hey, when's the last time, that you saw Satan go up there and present himself to God, like we heard what happened with Job? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right.
just all that kind of like, what do you talk about when they're just sitting with you and you're trying to make small talk while things are being prepared?
Yeah, I
But
can only
and this
imagine.
makes me also wonder. It seems to be, and you can tell me what you think, but it seems to be this conversation about Sodom and Gomorrah happens after the meal.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that could have been what they talked about while the meal is being prepared.
Which would have been kind of oh, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. I
Yeah.
would yeah. I don't know if Sodom and Gomorrah would have been like a good dinner topic.
Yeah. How's that ox? How's that steak? Is it good? Is it seasoned well? Yeah, I'm about to destroy about
You know
100,000
what I'm
people
saying?
tomorrow. So you wanna
I
so,
definitely think they waited till after dinner. It was like, all right, so
yeah.
but
So they had so basically I would imagine they had the good news for dinner, right? You're gonna have a son,
right.
it's gonna be great. Don't laugh. It's gonna be good. It's gonna really happen. And then afterwards, he pulls Abraham by himself to tell him the hard reality. And so, yeah, that's it's interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting to consider.
I love Abraham's back and forth with the Most High regarding what was going
Mhm.
to happen with Sodom and Gomorrah. Um, I when I think about that, like I can't help but think about like Simeon and Levi in a situation with their little sister
Yeah,
Dinah, and how they went with Shechem.
yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but some innocent people caught some stray bullets in that situation when Simeon and Levi went
Well,
into the city.
supposedly, the men of, according to Jubilees and the Testament 12 Patriarchs, the men of Shechem had been known to steal people's wives and kill the families.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this was kind of like and supposedly, according to Testament of Levi, that an angel actually showed up and prepared Levi, um, and
Oh
gave him a
wow.
sword and was like,
Wow.
yeah, you're blessed in what you're planning to do. Because
Got
it
you.
was like divine
Got you. That's
justice was
deep.
coming on Shechem anyway because of their behavior.
That's deep. That's deep.
Yeah.
I've always assumed that some people caught some straight bullets because of that long like dirge that like Jacob wrote, when he's
Yeah.
talking about the anger of his sons, Simeon and Levi and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So maybe it's an incorrect connection, but I've always looked at Abraham's back and forth with the Most High, and the Most High is basically saying like no innocent people are going to be harmed
Right.
in this situation. I love that about God. I love because especially people who are
Yeah.
outside of the faith, people like to make Yah, the God of the Old Testament, seem like he's this tyrannical being that just likes to destroy everybody when he's having a fit. Like, no, he's a God of justice, you know.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, it's Jubilees on the account of Shechem that it expounds upon how the men had planned to take Sarah and Rebecca and kill Isaac and Jacob after they healed from their circumcision. They basically went through circumcision just to
Just as a
like
formality
convince
to
to convince them that they truly were going to go through with this pact, and then they were intending to betray them immediately afterwards. And so that's where Simeon and Levi were like, all right, well, this is our chance to hit them before they hit us,
got you.
kind of thing. And they didn't tell Jacob about it, which is why in Genesis 49 Jacob makes that statement about Simeon and Levi and not sharing in their secret council.
Understood.
Yeah, it's interesting. But that's always try to remind people later on, like a few chapters later, Jacob is instructed by the angels to hand over his priesthood garments to Levi. So Levi was not just, according to Jubilees and Malachi chapter 2, 4-7, with the pact that Yahweh makes with Levi to have the priesthood. That was one of the reasons that Levi was considered zealous for the Lord to obtain the priesthood. Was because he was willing to carry out justice on Shechem. And that reminds me of the golden calf incident after Moses gets back down and starting to evaluate what's
Right.
happening. And he's like, who's on my side? Who's on the
Line in
Lord's
the
side?
sand.
Come over here. And then
Right.
those 3,000 Levites run over there and draw their swords and prepare to actually do the dirty work of the Torah,
Word.
which is to administer justice when it's really, really difficult.
Mhm.
Reminds me of those passages in the Torah that tell you, do not was it, I can't remember the exact wording, but it's basically saying, do not withhold this punishment, this judgment.
Right.
Because that's kind of
Right.
like the natural inclination of humankind is you get compassionate. You don't want to like kill the guy because he's your
Absolutely.
cousin, or he's, you've seen him around town. He's a nice
Deut
guy, but he made a bad mistake.
Deuteronomy 13, right? When I believe that the counsel was, if even you have a family member who pulls you off to the side and says, let us go worship foreign gods that we haven't known before, you are to without fail put them to death, and your hand must be the first to act on it. That's a fatal verse, but it's what must be done. If the Most High says it must be, all things considered, given the time period back then and whatnot. But it can come off harsh to somebody who might have incorrect parameters when they're trying to delineate what true justice looks like.
It can be rough. And so here's true justice with the angels being sent. And this is one of those unique forms of justice in the scriptures where Yahweh doesn't use men and their armies to accomplish something, but he just directly sends his angels.
Amen.
And he's like, I just need a couple of these angels for this job. And
right.
It's not even like he needs to send an army. He's just like,
right. Hezekiah, what was one angel took out 186,000 Assyrians?
Yeah, the Assyrians. Yeah, so it's just these angels are deadly. So he's like, I just need a couple to go down to Sodom and Gomorrah and take care of these dudes.